Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And with the permission of the House, I would like to share my time with Deputies Penrose, Costello and Morgan.
Deputy.
Thank you. Last October, the Labour Party brought a private member's motion to the floor of this House, calling for action on tackling the jobs crisis. Back then, the problem was obvious. We had an extra 100,000 people on the dole in the previous 12 months. The solution was obvious too. We needed an urgent response from government, a jobs plan, a training plan and an income plan, a completely new approach to the needs of the new unemployed. The truth is, we never got that plan. The budget, the smart economy document, partnership talks, the Fianna Fáil Ardèche, the Green Party conference have all been and gone, and still there is no announcement of a jobs plan. Indeed, the October budget focused on cutting back supports for the unemployed rather than reinforcing them. The draft framework for a pact for stabilisation, social solidarity and economic renewal, agreed with the social partners recently, stated, "We will convene a Jobs and Skills Summit in March 2009 to devise innovative approaches to maintenance of employment, creation of new employment and early and active engagement with those losing their jobs." Minister, where is that? Where is it? It hasn't happened. Crazy as it is still the policy of this government that you have to be long-term unemployed before you are eligible for key supports. How can a welfare system that promotes dependency ever hope to succeed? In the meantime, the dole queues have grown longer. 44 social welfare offices have recorded a doubling of their live register numbers in the past 12 months. The number signing on at a dozen welfare offices have actually trebled since the last general election. Do you ever get water, please? The processing times for job seeker claims have grown longer too. The average wait per social welfare office for job seeker allowance claims is now 6 weeks. 17 of the social welfare offices have a waiting time of 2 months or longer. The waiting times for self-employed people are particularly long. Pressure of numbers has meant the awful sight of long queues of newly unemployed people stretching down the main streets of our towns in the cold and rain. On this specific issue, there are very practical steps that could be taken. One is to schedule appointments so that queuing time is minimised. Another is to have sufficient indoor waiting accommodation, either in the social welfare office itself or close by. People should be entitled to be treated with dignity by the state. Another practical step is to provide better supports and insist on better returns from the social welfare branch offices. At branch offices, which are run on a contract basis by private individuals, the local branch manager determines staffing levels. So while there have been some extra personnel in processing claims in local offices, it is not clear how many, if any, extra staff have been employed by branch managers. Last year, branch managers were allocated €9 million between them to deal with claims on behalf of the department, and we are entitled to ask, where is that money going when the processing times are so dreadful? The bottom line is that of the 17 social welfare offices that have processing times of more than 2 months, 15 of these are branch offices. Either the Minister is not supporting branch offices enough, or the branch managers themselves are not employing enough staff. There has to be a serious question mark over whether this system is working and whether or not there is sufficient flexibility at times of high demand. Wherever the fault lies, it is up to the Minister to ensure that every job seeker can expect to have his or her claim dealt with speedily at their local office, no matter who is running it. This motion is about urging the government to get up off its backside and confront this problem. There are several areas where urgent action is needed. For a start, it's time to reform the back-to-work supports, such as back-to-education allowance and back-to-work enterprise allowance. These supports were established to tackle long-term unemployment, people who have been out of work for a year or more. In the case of back-to-education allowance, the usual waiting period for an applicant applying for a third-level course is a year, although it can be even longer depending on when a particular course starts. For back-to-work enterprise allowance, the usual waiting period is 2 years. These rules need to be changed urgently. The welfare system should be about preventing long-term unemployment rather than promoting it. It should be possible for those who have been made unemployed to avail of these schemes within, say, 3 or 4 months of losing their job. People who have received statutory redundancy are already permitted to avail of these schemes straight away, so the principle is already accepted. But many people in this day and age, we know, don't receive statutory unemployment. So, what is the argument for precluding those people from access to these allowances? And we know that the enterprise allowance itself would be revenue neutral if the business lasted 5 years. And indeed, it would pay itself back sooner than that if the business resulted in the recruitment of additional staff. Last year, the Labour Party brought forward its idea of an earn and learn scheme. The idea is that where a person is on short-term working, he or she would be able to take up a training or education place for the days on which they were not employed. There are job retention schemes along similar lines operating successfully in the Netherlands, and we could adopt those as a model. In addition, it can be very difficult for people who want to keep occupied while unemployed to conform to the current eligibility rules for job seekers' benefit. One employer contacted me last week to complain that a former employee, a job seeker, who he had let go because of falling revenue, contacted him asking if he could work for free for 2 hours a day, 3 days a week. He was still available for other work and actively seeking it. He just didn't want to be idle. When they inquired with the local social welfare office about it, they were laughed at. Obviously, you couldn't have the scenario where a job was being replaced. But at the same time, our welfare system should place a value on people keeping occupied when they are looking for work. Pretty soon, we could have 400,000 people doing nothing because that's what the current rules require them to do. In relation to graduate unemployment, the suggestion that appeared in yesterday's Irish Independent of recruiting teacher apprentices is also worth considering, where graduates gain experience of work in their own field and are paid €20,000, the cost of each job that's lost to the economy. It sounds to me like a good idea that could work across all sections of government and indeed with all professions. For example, it could be applied to accountants taken on in the revenue commissioners, architects and planners in local authorities, occupational therapists and other therapists in daycare centres, and many health service grades in the health services. Another pro-jobs initiative would be to promote the use of career breaks and flexible working arrangements. Not since 1980 have we had such a surge in births, 72,300 in the past 12 months, while 165,000 have joined the dole queues in that year. That presents a scenario where very many people do not have enough work, while many others have too much, given their present circumstances. Career breaks are rarely offered to employees outside of the public service. I believe a scheme should be introduced that incentivises employers to offer career breaks or flexible working arrangements, and at the same time provides employees with a legal entitlement to their job back and security on other issues for when that leave ends. For instance, employees don't qualify for social insurance credits if they take a career break, and that could be tackled. In recent months, some employers have chosen this option, most notably the Irish Examiner. The choice to take time out, that I believe many young parents and indeed other carers would like to make, is not an option for many and has little legal protection for those who do. Promoting and delivering on such a scheme would make more room in the workforce, reduce unemployment and provide flexibilities to families and carers when they need it. Another area the government should be reforming is community employment. There is a huge opportunity to match several sets of needs by expanding the number of community employment places. 1 in 3 of those on the live register are former construction workers or from that general sector. Within that cohort, there are several thousand workers who are over 50 years of age and have general trade and handyman skills. There is a huge demand among this group to find fulfilling employment in the social economy sector. At the same time, there is no state scheme of assistance for senior citizens who can't manage minor repair jobs to their own homes. Not everyone can rely on family members. Very often, these jobs are funded by a community welfare officer. So again, the additional cost to the state of expanding community employment is not that great. The needs of early school leavers must also be addressed. In particular, we should not allow the situation where the first act of a school leaver is to sign on the dole. There should be an entitlement for every school leaver to a place in employment or training, and financial support should be contingent on meaningful participation in such courses. As part of this, the government needs to lift the cap on PLC courses, using a portion of the funds set aside for the 51,000 training places for newly unemployed people. At the moment, there is a total cap of 30,000 on post-Leaving Cert course numbers. The City of Dublin VCs have said that there is a significant demand for places, with 3,000 students enrolled over and above the number of places they have funding for. Again, the cost of providing extra places is marginal, as most of the infrastructure and services already exist. Similarly, the cap of 5,000 on the VTOS scheme should be lifted. There are many other areas that deserve government attention. In my view, the National Development Plan needs to be dissected again, audited for the number of jobs it can create and reprioritised on that basis. The government should ensure that local employment services are extended to cover every part of the country, as I'm still hearing of people turned away for financial assistance on the basis of their address. Every unemployed person should also be guaranteed access to the services of a career coach with appropriate HR training. The government also needs to review the criteria it uses to judge projects it funds through public procurement procedures. We need to give the greatest weighting possible to recruiting unemployed people and local labour. Finally, I would argue that start-up grants for new business are not sufficiently geared towards modern businesses and should be reformed accordingly. The whole point of this motion, Cathaoirleach, is that there is more to government than just balancing the books. The government has been obsessed with balancing the books in recent months and has completely neglected the jobs crisis facing tens of thousands of our citizens. The 200,000 people that have joined the live register since the last general election are stuck in a system that was designed for a different time. It's time to change that system. If the government is serious about taking up ideas from the opposition and dealing with our problems in a non-partisan way, it will listen tonight. You can't solve the budgetary crisis without solving the jobs crisis. Give us a national plan now, and let's get on with getting people back to work. Thank you, Cathaoirleach.
Thank you,